Hello everyone, so today I wanted to make a video about constructing an altar. Now I wanted to make this altar construction video applicable to many different spiritual traditions and religions. So I'll be covering a wide variety of things that you can include on an altar and the kinds of things that I would include on an altar and things that I have included on an altar slash shrine really. I use these terms very interchangeable because I have my altar on my shrine to the gods. So what I will be displaying before you is a combination of different items that I would recommend based on the kind of altar you want to build, and we can go ahead and get started. Now, before you, I have a statue of Shakyamuni Buddha. Now, this statue of Shakyamuni Buddha, I would most certainly add a tea light candle here. Now, tea light candles are candles that are, short. They are basically wrapped in aluminum kind of material, and can act in many ways regarding faith and devotion. They can light an area, but also, depending on their placement, can create a sense of symbolic meaning. Just like with tea light candles, incense can be lit upon an altar. Now, this incense, Dragon's Blood by Satya, is a highly preferred incense of mine. I love the Dragon's Blood and I love the brand Satya. Very natural ingredients. But when you're particularly focusing on a shrine, on a god, on a spirit, and trying to attune yourself to that being, and maybe even while you're meditating or praying or working divination, like with the runes, you would light incense and the tea light candle at the same time to create that attunement necessary for what you're trying to do in your spiritual ritual or in your spiritual working. Something you might also want to include on your shrine or altar is a mala. Now, a mala, or oftentimes called prayer beads, which could be a prayer rosary if you're Catholic, is used to basically measure the amount of prayers or mantras that you recite. If every single rosary or mala has a certain amount of beads, and these beads in particular are made out of bone and carved in the shape of skulls. Very connected to life and death. I usually use this mala for the Divine Mother Kalima, which is connected to life and death and preservation, and really going beyond that veil of death and reaching transcendence. Now, every single bead basically is counting with your fingers by touch, usually when your eyes are closed, one mantra or one prayer. So once you get to the very beginning from which you started, that's one round or one larger recitation of your prayer cycle or your mantra cycle. This is a very good thing to include on any spiritual or religious altar or shrine, because you really are able to interact on multiple levels with your prayer or mantra recitation, and it allows your brain to focus on the touch and the movement of your fingers combined with the meaning and recitation of your voice. This is very important to many different traditions. Now, I also recommend you include singing bells. In many different spiritual traditions, the singing bells like these can be done between mantras at the beginning of prayer, at the end of prayer, and they can be basically done at the start and end of one round of a mala as well. So it's a very good tool to focus the mind and make to your mind, to your subconscious, clear the meaning of your prayer and mantra recitation, and to exclaim that this is the beginning of purity, the end of purity, and purity in between, depending on what tradition or religion that you follow. A couple other things you might want to include on your altar or shrine is a journal. Now, in a journal, you might want to free write when praying or kneeling before a god or respecting a god in offering. You might want to have a journal nearby that you can write down your inspirations from that god, being, spirit, what have you, in. Now, a journal can be incredibly useful for recording what your thoughts are doing, basically, every time you really start working with a god. If you feel like Odin is telling you this or that, then you might want to write it down in the journal and then see how the progress of your relationship with that god, with Odin in this case, goes as you move forward with your relationship. Now, you also might want to keep a small book, a book particular to a god, spirit, or being, beside the statue, beside the idol, whatever you want to call it. You might want to keep something like the Havamal next to Odin, because in the Havamal it is basically supposed to, and really is, the words of Odin. And you might find passages like ordered like this, and sometimes in other religions it's sutras or basically psalms and things like that. But in the Havamal, it's in stanzas, and you might find things like moderately wise should each one be, but never overwise. Of those men, the lives are fairest who know much well. Very vague seeming, but when you're able to meditate or pray on these things, then they can provide inner meaning once you start working with these stanzas. Something great is not always to be given. Praise is often for a trifle bought. With half a loaf and a tilted vessel, I got myself a comrade. So when you think about things like this, in maybe a small or a big book that you might want to keep in front of your God, being, or spirit, you start to have a relationship to the personality of that being. And then that allows you to form and attune to that being far better than if you did not have some kind of scripture or writing by that God in front of it and beside it. A few other things you might want to have on your altar when constructing an altar or a shrine. You might want to have something to offer a god or a spirit or a being. Like here we have Odin, so you might want to offer mead. Now this mead should have basically an offering bowl, or any offering that you're going to do, whether it be rice, mead, something, some kind of incense or powder. You might want to have an offering bowl, metallic or otherwise, sometimes clay, sometimes wood, depending on your preference. And you would pour that offering from the offering container, which is a bottle of mead, right now, into the bowl before the god or spirit or being. You might want to have a stick candle, a simple stick candle that will not, spill over. High quality stick candles will not drip their wax around the holder, which right here we have a small stick candle holder. You might want to light that candle, a stick candle, and sometimes you also, well, a lot of the time actually, no matter what spiritual tradition you're in, you'll want to have white 7-day candles. White 7-day candles are remarkable for illuminating, not just illuminating, but attuning to God, spirits, and beings, because you can leave a 7-day candle lit for a very long time, days on end. And they're very cheap. You can buy 7-day candles usually for about $1 at grocery stores. Usually they're next to the Catholic candles in the Hispanic food section. And since they're so cheap, they're far cheaper than buying a lot of stick candles, usually, most of the time. Now, what's good about these 7-day candles as well is that you can buy them on Amazon for different colors and things like that, and ones that'll actually last 7 days. Usually these ones you buy in the grocery store don't last 7 days, but they're incredibly cheap, so definitely worth buying. And white is a color for all gods, spirits, and beings. White is just a general color of recognition and worship. So on this particular white 7-day candle, since I'm dealing with Odin, I might write the rune Ansus, which is Odin's rune. And it's basically a downward facing F, but Ansus is the runes are primordial spirits. The Elder Futhark are a list of basically primordial spirits that many people use for divination, and I use for divination, but they are truly the fabric of reality, different threads. Now, using an expo marker, you can write on a 7-day candle a symbol, a rune, a sign for a god, just with an expo marker on the candle to have something to focus on, either when you're looking at it, meditating, or just having it lit in front of the being and showing recognition. So I highly recommend having an expo marker and these 7-day candles, because they can be highly useful in attuning yourself to that god or spirit, along with, of course, the offering bowl and the offering poured into the bowl. A few other things when dealing with beings such as the gods and spirits. You might want to have a seashell in which you can burn herbs in order to kind of spread that influence around the god as well as yourself in order to make a certain connection. Now, this is mugwort, and you want to have kind of a shell or something like that has holes in the bottom that can provide ventilation, and then something that will take a good amount of heat when burning herb in it. So this is mugwort, and it's kind of like the Northern European version of sage, like the Native Americans use, but the Northern European version. You might want to light it with this, or you might want to light it with a charcoal that you place the herbs upon for it to be lit for long periods of time. Assuming you have quite a bit of herb, because charcoal burns through it fairly quickly. But you might want to waft it around the god, either in front of him or around, or just kind of up, recognizing the direction of their influence, kind of the northern pole. And then you kind of want to move it around yourself, around your head especially, so that you kind of both inhale the smoke, but also have its vibration completely around your head. Just move it around your head a few times, move it around the statue a few times, then let it be. Now this is an oath bracelet. It's made out of bronze, and this shows my loyalty to the gods. And you might want to keep that in front of the statue. This one is, of course, for the Aesir and for Odin in particular. So I keep that in front of Odin's statue, and I put it on most days when I leave the house. Now the days that I don't put it on, I will put on a stave bracelet. Now this is a Vegvisir surrounded by the Elder Futhark alphabet, runic alphabet, and Vegvisir is supposed to give you blessings, luck from the gods, and make sure you don't lose your way. And that's the stave in the center, the inner circle, and the outer circle is the Elder Futhark, the primordial spirits of our Northern European ancestors in regards to the fabric of reality and our understanding of it. Now I'll either put this on or my oath bracelet on. And those are two things you might want to keep beside your god, spirit, or being. Regarding a particular kind of altar or shrine, for instance in Vodou, you may have a saint candle, a Catholic saint candle, with the sticker on, but it'll be a particular saint associated with a Vodou spirit. Now, the reason this is the case is because when Catholicism, Christianity, was the dominant religion in Haiti, for instance, using Haiti as an example, the people who practiced Vodou, the natural spirituality that rose up there through a combination of Catholicism, a little bit of Judaism perhaps, the Taino native population who was wiped out, and the Africans coming directly from Africa as slaves, the combination of all these things kind of made Vodou. Now, in order to hide their spiritual practices and their faith and devotion, they associated different saints with different Vodou spirits. Now, this particular saint is Saint Martin de Porres, and he is associated with Baron Samedi. Now, Baron Samedi is the guardian of the graveyard. It is said that if Baron Samedi does not dig your grave, you will not die. He allows us to communicate with the dead, to learn from the dead. He leads them into this world when we have certain ceremonies. And Baron Samedi is kind of a Loa, which is a spirit, who has the domain over life, death, sex, and kind of everything in between a lot of the time. Baron Samedi is a particular Loa that is associated with this saint, and also one that you might want to have black candles for. Black tea light candles are especially good because they're really hard to find, but I find they work really good for quick spiritual practices. Now, the black color is associated with death, of course, but it's also associated with soaking up negativity and getting rid of that negativity from you into the candle and burning it up. So tea light candles in different colors are good, but so are the different candles that you might buy from a grocery store that are saint candles of the Catholic faith. But what you can do with these candles, like this one is red and this one is green, is that if you have a particular spirit, god, or being you want to devote that candle to, and that color is correct for them, you could just scrape off the sticker, get some Goo Gone, and a razor blade, and just scratch that sticker off. It takes a while, but it's really worth it if you want to have a candle that's a particular color, either for a spell or out of devotion to a particular being, spirit, or god. Something else you might want to have on your altar or shrine is a wand. Now, this wand is made out of quartz. And it's quartz and different crystals are very potent when it comes to directing magical energy. So this one is made out of quartz, and I use it for directing will, spells, and tapping particular points on either a table or a gravestone or on the ground to signify different influences coming or being directed out to different directions. Now, the final thing that I'll talk about in this little segment is a ritual dagger. Now, A ritual dagger or blade should be kept in a black handkerchief or something that will contain the energy when not being used. And it's really any blade you feel you can really be attached to. Either that you use to carve into the ground to show that you are a spiritual warrior in the face of beings that would only recognize you and think of you as a warrior if you have some kind of bladed armament. You might even cut yourself with it in order to get a little bit of blood for a ritual. Now, a blade, this is a kukri blade. This is usually, the kukris are much bigger. I find that it's very ceremonial looking. It's very good as far as design, and it's wonderful as a ceremonial dagger, and one that I highly recommend. Just look up kukri, and it's a Filipino dagger, but usually it's just in the side of a sword. But I have carved the name that I've named this ritual dagger with on the other side that I did not show you, and usually you want to keep that name to yourself. But you want to think of it as a being in and of itself, a spirit in and of itself, your ceremonial dagger, your ritual dagger, whatever you want to call it. And it is something that you can use very similar to a wand, but you might want to use it for carving things as well. So just depending on what kind of practices you're going to be doing. A few accessories that may aid you that you might want to include on your shrine or altar is particular kinds of cologne that your god or spirit are interested in. Now, Florida water and Pompeii lotion for the Geda and many different kinds of loa spirits. Florida water is appropriate, as well as the Petua and the Rada. Pompeii lotion is used for the Rada most of the time. That's regarding voodoo spirits and the scents that they like, the kinds of colognes that have been associated and offered to them for a very long time. They might like one of these colognes, kind of scatter it along the altar or shrine right in front and around. Another thing is kumkum powder. Now, kumkum powder is a very Hindu thing. This is kind of what it usually comes in. It is a red powder that is often used to anoint the third eye and mark it for ceremonial purposes, but also in recognition of your third eye, marking it on yourself. Powders like that are very useful in making the ritual and ceremony more personal and personalizing yourself. With things like this, you might even want to put the colognes on yourself. Now, this dragon glass mirror or this obsidian mirror, it's made out of obsidian, and it's a few inches around, but it's very useful for when you're speaking to a spirit or god. You might want to look into this black mirror, and obsidian is a very grounding kind of mirror. You also might want to use a regular mirror or a silver mirror, but when you're speaking to a spirit or god, you might want to look for answers by looking into a mirror like this, obsidian mirror, or just trying to scry and figure out what a being is trying to tell you by looking to this in regards to your future, to the past, to aspects of reality you haven't seen before or want to know about. And just by personal experience, it takes a long time figuring out how to work with these obsidian mirrors or black mirrors or silver mirrors in order for you to really be able to use them effectively. Now, you'll have to look into books like perhaps The Art of Black Scrying or The Art of Black Mirror Scrying. That is a book that is useful for learning how to use a mirror just like this. But there are plenty of scrying books out there that'll help you learn how to use this as a conduit between you and other dimensions, or you and the god that you're trying to get close to. Some other things I would recommend for your altar/shrine is essential oil. Now, essential oil like this one that is rose, you can add into an oil burner like this one. This is a very cheap oil burner. You just put a tea light candle down here, light it, add a few drops of rose oil, and a little pour of water. It'll mix naturally usually, and then it'll slowly diffuse in the room as this tea light candle burns. Now, this is true of also spiritual oil. You can add some drops of that into there. And now when doing that with any of these, in this case, this is eucalyptus. First, I will add a little bit of purified water, and you want purified water for sure. A little splash, I would say. And then I wouldn't use tap water. There's just too much fluoride in it to make it really increase the spirituality of the environment, I guess you could say. This is eucalyptus oil. I'd add maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 drops. Kind of mix it around with this dropper. You definitely need a dropper when dealing with spiritual or essential oils. Make sure you have one. And then it'll usually mix naturally, but you might want to use, the end of the dropper to mix it. And you light that tea light candle down there. That will definitely raise the vibration of the room depending on the oil. If it's a spiritual oil connected to a certain spirit or god or being, like this one, which is Ogun, and also it's also connected to John the Baptist, because those saints and Loa spirits are often connected. That one will raise the vibration of the room to a particular tonal frequency, I guess you could say. Eucalyptus will increase it. Rose will kind of calm and increase the vibration. If you wanted to burn some lavender seeds in the shell that I showed earlier, that would definitely increase the pleasantness of the room. If you wanted to add some of these drops to a bracelet of some kind, that would allow yourself to have kind of a oil with you all day. You can always smell the bracelet, or it'll kind of go into your skin and you'll have that certain vibration. This is, of course, Santa Palo. This is some very spiritual wood, and if you light it, it will purify an area. Move it to every corner of your room. Kind of move it around the ground a little bit. Make sure to kind of turn in a circle in the center of the room, and getting the corners of a room with either sage, this white sage smudge stick like I have here, or the Santa Paulo, will greatly increase the purity of your space. It'll chase out a lot of negative influences that might have built up if you do it regularly and properly. Something else you might want to look out for when purchasing 7-day candles is the difference between not perfumed and perfumed. Now, the difference is, a lot of the time, you'll see that little black circle right there, or oval, that says perfumed. Get the not perfumed ones. Make sure that it doesn't say perfumed on it, because you can use that for far more than whatever scent that is perfumed with. This one over here is perfumed with. Because if it's perfumed, then you have fewer options as what oils you can either kind of dab into it, into the top of it, and kind of run your dropper around to kind of let it soak in, and whatever scent is scented with it, it'll always be artificial, and it will always clash with what you're trying to do regarding oils and sage or Santa Paulo. Now, regarding semi-precious stones, if you want to have a bottle of semi-precious stones, one that is associated with your spirit or God, then you can put it right beside the spirit or God. Like an amethyst might go with Venus, for instance, a goddess of love. Or you can just scatter it around the shrine and just allow these little stones to kind of sit around the area of your shrine or altar. Now, just remember one thing. Sage smudge sticks and Santa Paulo. Really great for purifying the area that you're living in. There's just one more thing I'd like to mention, everyone. When you're purchasing a statue, an idol, or something like that, you might want to purchase a symbol instead to represent a god, goddess, being, or spirit. Now, the Shiva Linga is a perfect representation of Shiva. It's a symbol / statue that's been used for many thousands of years at the very least. And it's very phallic in nature, but it also has some very symbolic importance. The Shiva Linga is something that you can pour milk on, something that you can pour rose petals on or flower petals on, and use a mantra like Om Namah Shivaya Om. And then you might pour a little bit more milk or pour some more flower petals onto it, and then repeat. And you'll find that for a god like Shiva, especially, a god of renunciation and inner truth and oneness, you'll find that a symbol that seems simple will be one of the best things you can do to attune yourself to that god, to really get on that level of consciousness, or at least a little bit closer to that level of consciousness. There's no way you'll just achieve Shiva consciousness by doing a Shiva Linga ritual, but you'll definitely be able to get a little bit closer to that level of consciousness that is associated, that is that God that is Shiva, the God that is just a step before the spirit beyond creation, the formless. Now, you also might want to keep a special box, maybe a box made out of stone, made out of wood, made out of some kind of even, plaster-like material to keep special items in. Now, this isn't a particularly special item to me, but this is an Om bracelet. if you wanted to keep something that you associate very much with the God, or something that you found that you feel like the God wanted you to find, or the Spirit wanted you to find, or a little message that really resonates with your connection to that being, you might keep it in a box like this and open the box whenever you're feeling like your connection to that being is just not as close as it should be. And really make a box like this, really make it a large deal when you open it, in order to get that little bit of boost in your connection. But at any rate, we're going to wrap this video up. It went on a little bit longer than I expected it to, but there's a lot of things to explore. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please shoot it down in the comment section below on YouTube. And if this is on Facebook, feel free to comment as well. Now, if you want to support me on Patreon, feel free to go to www.patreon.com/darkrealist. Capital D, capital R. www.patreon.com/darkrealist. Capital D, capital R. For just $1 a month, you can really help me out and help spread my message by becoming my patron. And you get a little bit extra content in regards to things that I write. Of course, look me up on Instagram at VeveMasta. I'll probably be the only one. And if you really want to contact me and talk some more about things like this, or the gods, or the spirits, or you just want to meet me as a person, and because you want to learn how I started this path that I'm on, feel free to visit www.facebook.com/hunter.salazar. And I'm open to talking with anyone who is polite. So hey, thank you very much for watching. I hope this has been interesting, and I hope to see all of you on my channel in the future.